We understand everyone has unique talents, often hindered by self-limiting beliefs and fears. At Regenesys, we empower our students to overcome these barriers, achieving greatness through high-quality management and leadership programs. These programs focus on holistic development, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical, and financial growth. Regenesys extends its educational services globally with Business School, School of Public Management, School of Law, School of Finance, School of Technology, and School of Education. We have campuses and offices across South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, India, Croatia, and the United States. With over 300,000 students and alumni from 190 countries and partnerships with major multinationals like Mercedes-Benz, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, and MTN, Regenesys stands as a distinguished international higher education institution. Our corporate education division offers diverse programs for various managerial levels in business, government, nonprofits, and state-owned enterprises. We tailor these programs to organizational needs, enhancing productivity and fostering innovation. Digital Regenesys prepares professionals for the digital era with programs in data science, AI, cybersecurity, digital marketing, project management, and more. Allowing students to study now and pay when they earn is Ed for All, our innovative approach to education financing. Denanda Talent, our bespoke recruitment agency, is dedicated to launching your career journey post-graduation. My Wealth Investments, offering a wealth of knowledge, is a gateway to financial mastery. FinEd Tech is at the forefront, revolutionizing your educational experience with state-of-the-art tech solutions. Enhancing our comprehensive educational approach, Healthy offers a wide range of services, clubs, classes, and offerings, including a gym and tailored fitness programs for our students. We also offer a diverse culinary experience at Reg Cafe, catering to all preferences, from hearty meals to healthy snacks. We commit to supporting your journey towards dream realization, leadership development, and contributing to a better world. As your lifelong learning partner, we wish you happiness and success. Welcome to Regenesys. Our mission is to awaken the potential of individuals and organizations, helping them realize their dreams. We understand everyone has unique talents, often hindered by self-limiting beliefs and fears. At Regenesys, we empower our students to overcome these barriers, achieving greatness through high-quality management and leadership programs. These programs focus on holistic development, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical, and financial growth. Regenesys extends its educational services globally with Business School, School of Public Management, School of Law, School of Finance, School of Technology, and School of Education. We have campuses and offices across South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, India, Croatia, and the United States. With over 300,000 students.
Okay. What is going to be a thought-provoking and insightful discussion on the topic, Unleash Your Workforce Potential, Tech Hacks for the Future of Work. This is an initiative by Human Resources Community of Practice at Regenesys Education, what is also known as HRCOP. The HRCOP is a collaborative network where we encourage the exchange of thoughts, ideas, and best practices between industry experts, faculty, and students. It's a platform where we try to bridge the gap between academia and industry. And we also look forward to draw insights for enhancement in development of skills, which is needed to thrive in today's fast-changing work environment. Welcome once again. I'm Dr. Shaista Fatima, the moderator for today's panel discussion. I'm presently leading the HRCOP and looking forward to all the deep insights which we are going to gather from our panelists today. And I also invite the audience, please do not forget to share your insights, your comments, and most importantly, your questions in the chat box. My colleague, Dr. Renu, will be keeping a tab on the chat box, and we will be asking those questions to the panelists toward the end of the panel discussion. Today's discussion focuses on the rapidly changing world of work and the role which emerging technologies such as AI, machine learning, and many more, which are playing and which are changing the whole landscape of human resources, especially people management. So get ready to gather insights, which I'm sure you are not going to get from ChatGPT, because here we have our very, very own distinguished panelists with all the wealth of experience and insights with them. We are honored to be joined by a distinguished panel of experts who are leaders in integrating technology into HR strategies. Before we take a deep dive into our conversation, I invite our panelists to please briefly introduce yourselves to the audience and just share a bit of work which you're presently doing in the field of HR. And also share one trend which you think will define the future of work a decade ahead. So yeah, let's start with Maggie. I see you on screen.
Thank you so much. I'm Maggie Mudiba, the HR director at the Affinity Group, in some areas consulting and in some areas being the HR director, as I said, leading a team of HR experts, and also I'm a part-time piggery farmer, small scale, and I don't know whether I should go to my qualifications. They're well published on my LinkedIn. I've got an MBA, and I also have a certificate from Harvard University, where I've been there in person in 2001, and also have done international business and international relations with LSE last year as well. So I'm hoping to hear more from my partners today, and I suppose it's going to be fun to hear from other experts in this field. And obviously, when it comes to what the future of work will look like in 10 years' time, I think what we are going to see is where HR experts or teams will actually be released to continuously innovate moving forward, but very much released from the current service-orientated role of HR. So employees will actually be having everything that they can do on their fingertips. With systems such as Workday, which is cloud-based, and many others that I will share later in the conversation. And I think that for us does not really make the role of HR obsolete, but will be releasing HR to be continuous researchers of making it much better and faster and agile to provide services to the workers out there.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for the lovely intro and for telling us more about yourself, and also for sharing the trend. Definitely, innovation, research, agility, that's what we are looking forward to. Thank you for those insights, Maggie. Now let's quickly move ahead, and Kelly Bokile, would you like to go next?
I knew I was going to go next. My name is Kelly Bokile. I'm currently the talent manager at Bit Software, previously at the Mr. Price Group. After Maggie, I haven't been to Harvard yet, but it's something that's on my list to do. But I do have an MBA and various qualifications that are industry related as well. That's me in a nutshell. In terms of the future of the workplace in the next decade, I recently went to Canada on an international course, and I learned about the concept called organizational ambidextrity. So in order to have an innovative environment and for companies to grow and to create new products that are suited for employees, you need to have a structure that is suited for that. So the organizational design landscape will change, where you have somebody who in finance will do the processing, the P&L, but you'll have a different leg where you have a leadership capability as well that looks at innovating and funding, because that person that does the day-to-day cannot innovate as well. So I think the future of work for me, look at the concept of organizational design, but organizational ambidextrity, to be quite honest.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That's very interesting to hear, organizational ambidextrity. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. And I hope that you'll speak a little bit more about it as the conversation continues. Next, Ethan, would you like to go next?
Yes, sure. This is very exciting. So for what Maggie and Kelly have told us is really up my alley. I'm an org design specialist. I've got 20 years experience coming from the likes of Deloitte, Ernst & Young. I used to run the org design practice and also tech components for both of them. I run my own company now called People Core Consulting, which is really dealing with complex environments. You know, COVID has taught us a lot around complexity. You know, we don't have a linear type of organization anymore. So how do we deal with simplifying ourselves through information and understanding how do we design organizations, similar to what Kelly was saying now, around, you know, being more ambidextrous, I suppose, servant leadership concepts. How do we kind of ensure that we're bringing purpose into everything? So the complex environments needs to simplify things. And as I say again, having information at our fingertips is really the key to being able to sense and be in the moment. Without being able to be in the moment, you can't deal with complexity because you don't know what's coming next. So my view around, you know, the future of work is really how do we as HR people, the fraternity, embrace technology? How do we apply the cloud-based concepts, you know, the Workdays of the world, success factors, etc., to allow us to really understand what are the trends happening in our organization to be predictive, to allow machine learning, in a sense, to kind of showcase how we can see, well, what's likely to happen around our, you know, organizational, you know, the talent. How do we predict who's going to be there, who won't be there? So really just having all the information at our fingertips is really what I want to be pushing, and I am pushing organizations for the future of work.
Thank you so much, Ethan. What you said really resonated with me as well. At Regenesys, we always talk about purpose. We want to have conscious leaders develop that skills within ourselves and within our students. So definitely having a purpose, and then definitely how we can utilize technology with purpose. That sounds really the future of work for me as well. Thank you so much. I really resonate with what our speakers are talking about. So let's move. We are going in a random order as I'm seeing the names on my screen. So please, we are not following any other protocol right now. I see Andisa's name next. So Andisa, can you please come in and share a bit about yourself and one trend that you think will define the future of work in the decade ahead of us?
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm Andisa Liba. I am a fractional worker. I spend half of my time in executive function at Float Pace. The other times I spend consulting with HR colleagues and business peers across the SADC region. So countries from Botswana, Zambia, Swaziland, Namibia, Blantyre very soon, and others. And I think from a Pan-African perspective, I think the conversation that's been had around the future of work is the intersectionality of technology and what DEIB then looks for the modern day employee. So I think there's a lot of cross-pollination in terms of what we can learn from our peers in the other markets and what they are willing to learn from us in this market. I think we are sometimes seen as progressive and as peers who have elevated, I think, their thinking past homogenous ideation of what the world of work is going to look like for the future. So I'm always eagerly, excited to join conversations such as the one today to discuss such a pertinent topic.
Thank you so much. And again, you raised a very important point, DEIB and cross-industry learning. So this is very, very important points which you highlighted. Thank you so much, Andisa. Nora, would you like to go next.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Festa. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nora Suhunwe, currently the executive head of HC for Santam Group. I think after going after Maggie and Gilokufide, you don't want to delve into but I've got a master's. I think I'm a lifelong learner of people. I've studied industrial psychology. I'm very fascinated about just understanding human beings in general. But most recently, I think leadership has been my passion, because I really do think a lot of what we speak about today really does rest on leadership. And if I talk about the trends, and I think even might have alluded to it, this concept of servant leadership, because I do think what the future is going to require is a different competency from leadership, and I'm not sure whether we are ready as leaders for that. We talk about automation, we talk about technology and AI, but it's about what leaders are going to be able to do with that technology and AI. We talk about there's now this new trend of gig economy and freelancing, and I think Andisa, is already tapping into that. And I think that's what the trend is going to be. The type of employee that we are seeing now, where you've got a role and that's your role and it boxes you. I don't think that's what's going to happen in the next 10 years. I think, people want to dabble in different things. And therefore that brings a complexity to you as a leader in terms of how do I then manage that. So I really do think that there's a big part that is going to be required from my leaders. And if we don't ready them now, I think we're going to be in trouble in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Nora. Some very, very important points again you highlighted related to leadership, and especially servant leadership in the changing world of work. Gig economy is something which is very much in trend now, and yes, we are hoping to see this trend amplify in the future, and how we ready ourselves. Thank you so much, Nora, for highlighting on these points. And I see that, Thandi, please, I'm so sorry, please go ahead. Last but not the least, Thandi. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Shaista and Regenesys. So I'm currently the Group Head of Learning and Transformation at Evolution. And, we're a financial services player, much like a lot of my colleagues around the table. And one of the things that I'm always excited to do, and it's just become a career mantra for me, is just delivering transformative initiatives with a focus on customer experience, employee experience, equity, and innovation. And that's really the part of the spirit. And, I keep hearing it as well around the room in some of the intros, is the connection to purpose, the personal purpose, that organizational purpose, and something that's bigger than yourself. And I think that's one of the things that make HR professionals successful. And one of the, I think, most exciting things I've done recently was just being part of a board for an educational institution. And part of that is informing the changing landscape of education in our country and how we become as a country globally competitive in the space of education, and how we deliver education in the changing landscape of technology and AI and all of these things that are being thrown in at the moment. And so, with that said, some of the trends, or at least one or two I can think of, is that skills in the next decade will become more valued than job titles and hierarchy. It's going to be more about what you're able to do, what you bring, and what kind of value you bring. And obviously, automation and AI transforms jobs and the nature of jobs and how we do work, and therefore necessitating continuous learning, reskilling, upskilling, and that whole cycle keeps happening, and really to impact skills and what people bring as a value to the table.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Tanya. You highlighted some very important points, reskilling, upskilling, and that whole cycle of learning and unlearning, which we have to do because of the emerging technologies and the whole changing world. But the most important point which all of our panelists highlighted is the purpose, the reason of doing something, the purpose of your being, and as a leader, how you're going to lead these changes is something we have to be very, very thoughtful about and mindful about. Thank you so much to all the panelists for that lovely introduction, as well as for highlighting some of the trends which we can see, which foresee in the decade ahead in the world of work. So let's get into the meat of the discussion. I'm so sorry if there are any vegans out here. I don't literally mean it, but yeah. Let's begin our discussion with a question to Even. Even, you talked about a lot of technologies such as machine learning, AI, etc. So I just wanted to understand from you, as the founder of People Who Are Consulting, what have you noticed? What are the top technology-driven trends you are seeing in people management today? And how can organizations stay ahead of the curve?
Okay, so it's a very it's a broad question. I mean, it depends on your field of expertise, right? So I'm an org designer, which, by the way, I believe covers org effectiveness as well. It's nice to build structures, but you can have the best structures in place and the worst operating rhythms, and you're going to get nowhere. So I think for me as an org designer, I like to be able to take, as I said earlier in my introduction, the information, right? So I always like to look for clear information, analytics, to be able to preempt, predict, to be able to start to see what's the as-is analysis. And I'm finding I've got currently I'm working with 3 large listed companies. And to be very honest, none of them have actually got really good systems in place. One has just implemented D365. When last year, I was part of we implemented that in Dubai. The Success Factors, another company I work with, Oracle. So those systems are very good. They're very expensive, as I'm sure some of you on this panel know, to implement these. But it's whatever system it is that suits you, we need to get to that point where we can have the availability of the analytics to be able to use it, to make decisions. Because I find that too much of the time we're guessing. I've just been asked now, I'm busy writing a proposal where this organization, they want to be able to preempt and predict how many resources, resource plan, what's their executive have asked them around how many resources they need in the next 6, 12, and 18 months. So they told me they need 40 to 60 people, and they divided that, gave me a spreadsheet around how many they need per department. But when I looked at it and I started cross-examine a bit more detailed, I said, well, how do you know? Where's your volumetric study? How do you know that you need so many people? So again, it's all about understanding, getting to the basics. And I'm very much about living in the moment, to deal with complexity, to be able to have the power of now. You need to be able to have the information at your disposal in order to be able to do that. If you don't have that, you're guessing. And that's where I've done studies now and also looked around with other companies that I partner with in the US and also the rest of Africa. There's a couple of companies that I'm working with where we've done analysis that those companies that got through COVID were the ones who were able to deal with the complexity. And the first step is to be able to understand, through analytics again, what's happening on the ground. So again, you could go across machine learning. I could cover a whole lot of things. I'm going to stick at that point right now. Otherwise, I'm going to get too broad, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, Even. Would you like to share, will it be okay to share some of the tools which you are using for data analytics?
Yes, sure. So, well, it depends on the organization I go into. Right now, I'm collaborating with a company called Agent New. When it comes to org design, also org view is another powerful tool that I use to really quickly get to the depth of an organogram, to understand the gender disparities, diversity in the organization, the payroll differences between departments. So very quick, if you get a personnel information or HR information, quickly pump it into those tools, and within seconds you've got, if you obviously input the right data, junk in, junk out, obviously excluded. You put in the right information in the right format, and you can get very quick information out of that. So I use that almost as an accelerator with all my clients to do a very quick snapshot as is, and then we can do strategic workforce planning. I'm part of a startup, well, it's actually not a startup anymore. It's called Uvital, top 5 globally around wellness tools. And so I can at any point in time determine per department how healthy an organization is. Who are the most likely age groups? Obviously, Poppy determines or kind of gives us a bit of a, we can't just go and get deep dive individually, but per department, per age group, etc., you're able to go and determine who are the most at risk. How do we kind of help them from a wellness perspective, as opposed to having these traditionally reactive wellness programs?
My boss is I need to find out if I need to help hide the bodies or help with
I think somebody is somebody needs to be on mute.
Yeah, so on mute there. That's Dr. Shaista, we've got 3 of you on this, I think.
Yeah, I'm also worried now. Okay.
There's a clone.
Yeah, so we have, we are talking about technology, and you see, I have 3 clones present in the session. Okay. I'm so sorry for the interruption. Even, you were,
it's all about the data, right? To be able to be preemptive and forward plan. I mean, just talking about now, the cloning of you. I go into so many meetings where there's an AI bot. Where somebody comes in, they've got an AI tracker. We've got to also be so careful about what we're saying. But it saves time. I use AI all the time in my own world to cut out 4 hours a day, let's say, around building a job description. Why must I go and spend hours of building a JD when I can just use AI to put in the right prompts and it comes out much quicker? And also to summarize the notes of this meeting. So AI is everywhere. Technology is everywhere. We need to be embracing it. And I think we're actually beyond anxiety. We used to be very anxious population. Even a year ago, there was lots of research done in the Trends report by Microsoft, how we are able to be so anxious at one point, and now we're actually all embracing it. It's kind of part of the course around how we deal with our working environments, embracing technology.
Thank you so much, Evan. So you highlighted a lot of points there, and some very, very pertinent points. Thank you so much for that. Now, as we have talked about the technologies and how tools as well, and how they are helping us, Maggie, I want to hear from you that how is technology disrupting the traditional skill sets which we have? So could you just highlight? You're on mute, Maggie, if you can just, You're still on mute. Let me try to unmute you from my end.
Okay, looks like I'm unmuted, eh?
Yes, you're on.
Yes. Look, I think it's very, very exciting for the world to be where it is today. If you look at COVID, that was forced on us and really forced us to be more creative instead of rolling back after the pandemic. But before COVID, we were again very much forced, because one thing that I've learned from my LSE studies was that the world has actually become flat. If you look at the Americans, the West in particular, that was much more dominating globalization in terms of trade. That has moved quite drastically towards the East, where supply chains are cheaper and obviously trying to be as efficient as possible. But now, if you look behind all these systems and all these big concepts, there's people there. And people can't be traveling because their work needs to be done. We need to provide technology, as Evan has said earlier, for people to be efficient, to be on time, and to be successful in terms of whatever that they're actually doing. And as a result, technology becomes the big thing. However, one of the studies that I'm researching on is, what about the people that are currently doing those jobs that are going to be in the forefront of technology? Now, these people have been in organizations for long. They've got the capability to learn. And one of the strategies that we are applying is to make sure that these people are actually transitioned into new roles and in a manner that is very constructive, in a manner that is very exciting, in a manner that is actually very sustainable, so that they can actually look forward to this. Now, one of the things that we're looking at is also to say, how do we code some of the work that we do as HR practitioners? Because a lot of work that we actually have been doing through the standard operating procedures and work list and so on, those are the things that can actually be codified and be accessible to any service provider or the people that are receiving our services. And that actually, like I said, it releases HR people to become more researchers, more coders of the work that we actually do, and be released to actually be a step ahead to the world that we are going to be 10 years from now. And I think it was exciting. I need to say that I've researched the tech conference that's coming soon. I think it's in the Silicon Valley on the 25th of September, spearheaded by none other than what's the lady's name again? Stacey Harris of Sapient Insight Group, who is spearheading this particular conference with papers and so on. And I think one of the very important aspects that they're going to be looking at is systems such as Smartling, an AI language translation company, announced a partnership with ServiceNow. I mean, everything is going to be translated. And how does this help us in the world of globalization as HR practitioners? It means that if I am recruiting somebody from Rwanda, that person does not have to learn English or German or anything else in providing the HR services. They will be having a translation wherever they are, being able to translate whatever that they need to understand, and also being able to translate whatever that they actually wanting to say. And that on its own begins to make sure that we level the playing field in terms of globalization, but move over and above that to make remote work and global recruitment a success, because people will be able to translate through Smartling AI language, for them to be able to provide the services in the language that they're comfortable with, and using technology to translate whatever that they want to understand and what they are also being saying. Over and above that, some of the other technologies that we're looking at is ZipRecruiter, which is a company that has been acquired in UK-based employer review platform Breakroom, and that is beginning to also provide authentic employee ratings on aspects such as pay, hours, flexibility, working conditions, and culture. And that on its own says, again, from a remote work point of view, these are the systems that will make it easier for us to recruit whoever, anywhere in the world, without people having to move an inch. Payoneer is another scheme, another platform as well, that is also cloud-based, that is going to assist us with HR payroll platform, etc. And all these services that I'm talking about and systems that I'm talking about, HR practitioners are sitting behind and are able to code and make it easier for us to transition into new roles, but also to make sure that everybody evolves with the new world of HR as we move forward to advance our skills and service our clients globally. I think that's where I'll stop for now.
Thank you so much, Maggie. So you highlighted a lot of important points, such as the need for skills agility to transition into different roles, and definitely that needs to encourage relearning and upskilling, definitely. Also, you shared a lot of tools, and I'm not, now amazed at why ServiceNow is one of the most innovative companies in the Forbes list this year. So definitely they are, as you highlighted, looking into it. But I just want to ask a follow-up question to you, Maggie. Do you see any challenges also coming in when we are using technology, especially in the field of people management? Do you foresee any challenges, or are you facing any challenges currently?
Look, it is going to be a challenge, and it falls on us as HR practitioners on how do we make the subject acceptable to those that we're talking about. I mean, change agent is required to advocate two things. We need to be consistent with what we are trying to package and communicate, and we also need to be constant. And as a result, I always believe that if I am going to face the challenges of those that I want to follow where we are going, I'm going to make sure that I become the one that communicates. This is one aspect that cannot be outsourced. And I actually contributed on a literature on LinkedIn about 2 weeks ago about how to win over trust. And trust can only be won over by those that are communicating, being the ownership of, or being the owners of that message. And secondly, being consistent and constant about what you're actually saying. And that really assures people to follow you and be able to transition into new roles. And actually try to present to them what the world will look like, and for them why they should actually be able to partner in the new world and make it as exciting as possible. And I've seen it with coding, that people like myself, being close to retirement in a few years' time, that does not mean I can actually retire. What I can do, I can take the wealth of knowledge that I've harnessed over the years and harvested, and be able to code it and evolve myself into a business that actually can provide the services online without being present. And this is what must actually be advocated for everybody that either has knowledge, or those that needs to require knowledge, or those that needs to be transitioned, for them to see this as a business value proposition rather than as a job itself. I mean, earlier on we were talking about gig opportunities. Those gig opportunities are about that. I know somebody who's a CA who is doing courses for Coursera. And if you look at it, it's actually gig. 1 hour she's presenting how to formulate annual financial statements. The next moment she's actually pitching for a business in Google. And that's what the world is going to require. It's no longer going to be about the title. It's no longer going to be about how many years of service you have, but it's going to be about the knowledge that you actually harness. And only 2 things are required: is the skills and the qualifications to be able to command respect in the field of the knowledge expertise that you're actually wanting to share. And I must say that where I am and where I have been with the many organizations that I've restructured, that has been the strategy for people to imagine and believe in the future that you're actually advocating. And again, being very credible, and credibility is just being consistent and being constant about the message that you're actually sharing. And we've won many battles as far as that is concerned.
Thank you so much, Maggie. I see you hinting towards authentic leadership, being authentic leaders, and having our heart, our hands, and mind all working in sync together. So thank you so much for highlighting those points. Kelly Bohele, I would like to move towards you to just know that what specific tech hacks or tools you have found most impactful in optimizing employee productivity. From your experience, if you can share some tech hacks or tools. Yeah.
So I think Dr. Chase, we've spoken a lot about the positives in terms of technology, and the tech hacks that we have in my current employer and in the industry actually as a whole, is measuring productivity, but measuring productivity from keystrokes, from the phone. But that has a danger in itself, because productivity does not equate output. So the danger of technology and the technology that we have at our disposal. I work at a dev house. It's an IT company. And for those who don't know what a dev house is, consulting development house where we have a lot of developers. I mean, right now there's a lot of noise because our culture and the way we determine what is fit for purpose in terms of how our construct, in terms of having PlayStations, in terms of having canteens across. It's about the people that we have, and interestingly enough, average age is 25 in terms of our staff complement. So we sort of have to ensure that, they are engaged, and we use a lot of technology in the day-to-day operations. But what I've seen is that we've spoken a lot, and even on this platform, of the positives of technology. But when we talk about the human touch, and when we talk about our role as people leaders, and from an HR perspective, there is a danger because we lose that. And as we're speaking about servant leadership is required to balance out the productivity and the output that technology gives you. To go back to your question about in terms of the hacks, we have really cool things that we do. We use gamification. So when we communicate, I don't communicate using an email. Talking about coding, as an HR practitioner, I'm learning how to code. And the back end, I'm learning how to design. because of the environment I'm in and because of the people that I service and the strategy that we have to implement. So gamification is a huge tool in terms of just communicating, engaging, and also in the learning and development, and also within the rewards and recognition, because we have leaderboards. And when people come in, they want to have interesting ways of being engaged. So gone are the days where we send an email and we say, hey, you get 150 Rand voucher. It doesn't work here. People are interested in winning virtual rewards. They're interested in winning virtual tokens that leads to a greater outcome. So gamification at OWL plays a critical component from a recognition perspective and also from a learning and development perspective, because we've also seen that a lot of people aren't engaged, even though there are learning opportunities, and don't really want to update their knowledge. But by using gamification, we've seen that there has been an increase in adoption and in the interest of learning. People are learning while they're playing PlayStations in our space during lunchtime, which is very interesting for me. And those introductions to increase awareness, to increase learning, is showing a little bit of what the future looks like in our space, predominantly when our average age is 25 years old.
Sure. Thank you so much for highlighting the importance of understanding the demographics of the workforce, as well as how we can make it more engaging and fun, rather than just focusing on productivity. And also, thank you for highlighting the dangers associated with that. So, thank you so much, Kelly. Now, I would like to move to Tanvi. Tanvi, what tech hacks have you been using to change the landscape of learning and development, as we have been talking about the skills and upskilling and reskilling?
Yeah, so I mean, we also, in our organization is fully remote, work from home, including all of our customer interface employees. And so that in itself presents a different dynamic to organizations that are fully on site or remote. And so from learning and development as a start, definitely gamification, thanks for opening the door, is one of those things that we do. So our workforce is also relatively young. I think our average age is about 28. And so knowing that we are competing for headspace and time against the likes of TikTok. So what we've been able to do is transition our training and courses and all of that into micro modules. So short, bite-sized pieces of content that don't require, nobody has 3 days of headspace to sit through a course anymore. We do, but we don't. And so being able to speak to that audience, the ability to use our AI and analytics, so on our learning experience platform that really powers the learning management and repository on the back, is that we push out training and quizzes and knowledge to you based on what you've looked at. We're Netflixing learning. So based on the themes and the courses you've liked or you've looked at or you've browsed at, here are more topics and themes that are geared towards that, but also where we have role-specific, competence-based kind of training and courses. We then push out weekly quizzes and assessments based on, firstly, to test for new knowledge, but to also help you retain old knowledge, and also ensuring that we are assessing you on places where you didn't score that well in the previous week. And so all of that geared at highly personalizing the learning experience for our employees, because Netflix can do it, why shouldn't we? Another thing that we've been able to do is play around with voice cloning. So we have, if anyone creates content and animation and things like that, you know how not easy it is to lend your voice or to do a video and make sure that all of the tones and everything is in the right place. And so we've also used some of our employees' voices, and we are using them in our training courses in a cloned format. And obviously the challenge has been, this is brand new. We nobody's really played around with this. There isn't any precedence, but we're taking that as a really positive challenge and a positive opportunity to be able to, one, change the landscape of learning through tech, but to also involve our employees who are not on site. Our employees sit everywhere. And so we're able to then credit you and say, we've used Dr. Shaista's voice and in this course, and this is the avatar we've gone with. And the ability to, I think Kilebogile alluded to this, to give our employees the opportunity to contribute and create learning content. So we have people who are really great. It's macro modules. I'm really great at this one thing, formulating a spreadsheet. I'm really great at, doing pricing and analytics in this particular way. And to be able to share that with colleagues across the organization without having to go find a specialist externally. We've got all of that IP internally. And then to use that into our learning, internal learning platform as well. So, yes, heavily using tech to be able to also meet the demands of a remote work environment, but to also include this remote work environment in all of our people processes.
That sounds wonderful. And I was just wondering as you were speaking that how are the older generation taking, because we are working in a multi-generational work space. So yeah.
I want to say that is a myth. I have been, in the last 15 years, easily been pleasantly surprised by what we deem as an older generation by age, on how they have pioneered and led and been our change champions for tech and AI and all of these new and wonderful things that are happening. So I want to say that that's a myth. I haven't, in fact, I've had the opposite. I've had younger people, age-wise, who have been a bit more resistant to changes and to tech and to new things that are happening. But the older generation has been far more embracing of this. And I think it's because they've got a lot more experience with change processes and workplace changes generally, where there's, tech is one of those things. It's the one other thing. It doesn't faze them at all.
That's so good to hear, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, can I just comment on definitely what Tanya's saying with the older generation? Because I think what I have found for me, it's a work ethic thing. Because what I find is that, the work ethic of older generation, and I'm sure your younger generation will crucify me for saying this, but there's a different type of work ethic that your older generation have to your more newer or your younger generation. And because of that, anything that is new or any change that is thrown at them, I think because predominantly at the core of what is a value to them, it's a value around productivity, around performance, around I want to add value. And therefore, they're much more open to try new things. The newer generation, we have fun and games with them. But I find that because their work ethic sometimes is a little bit loose, they are more resistant to some of these changes, because then, if it means I now need to do things differently, or if my work changes, then they're resistant to that. I think sometimes that's what drives, but I agree with Pandy that, we do tend to think that there is resistance from older generation. I also don't see a lot of that.
Yeah, I think I can add to that as well. I've seen it, myself, I suppose I am one of those people that can be labeled older generation. We come with a lot of confidence because we've seen it all. What is it that I haven't seen? And any change that comes is not going to break me. It's not going to take anything away from me. So we've seen it and we have done it and we are here. And what is really going to be a train smash in trying one more change is that we see opportunities, especially given the advantage of experience that we have amassed over the years. But over and above that, we have learned to be resilient. What I've seen also, the difference between me and my children, who I see them as Gen Zs, is that everything that happens, it's new, it's important, it's for nice to have, and it's for now. for us, we look at it and it really just brings out the best in us because we are more resilient and because we are more settled. For the lack of a better word, we are more settled and nothing shakes us quite easily because, like I said earlier, we've actually seen it, we have adapted, we have been able to transition through those changes, and therefore it really just creates a new chapter in our richness of experience. And I believe that that's one thing that really puts us at the cutting edge of making sure that change actually happens and change actually holds on to the new generations as well. And over and above that, when we talk AI, we see opportunities because I'm saying, hang on, I'm not going to rust at home with this wealth of knowledge of over 40 years. I'm going to codify what can be codified and make a value proposition and see myself actually evolving with the knowledge that I've harnessed over the years. So it's actually a well embraced time zone, the way we find ourselves as the much more older generation that is trying to make sure that we make it as easy as possible for those that are new in the market. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michael. There's a reason we say old is gold, right? Thank you so much for bringing those perspectives. Alisa, I see your hand is raised. Please do come in and share your perspective as well.
Sure. I mean, I think I wanted to echo the sentiment of my colleagues around how it's important. We must be very careful to not perpetuate, I think, the stereotypes of and the divisive rhetoric of older and younger generation. I mean, I think each generation has their own blind spot, and I think their own shortcomings and the inverse of that scale. I mean, research is showing us that the average successful, tech startup CEO or founder is typically 45 years old. And I'm talking about someone who's run a business that, outside of just being funded by a VC, that is eventually successful. And in a business that is profitable. The average CEO in energy and tech spaces generally is about 55 to 60 years old. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge, I think, with our more wise counterparts that we really have to lean into that wisdom. And I think whilst they will eventually transition from formal employment, there's value, I think, in staying closer to them from a consultancy perspective, because there's so much of institutional knowledge that hasn't always been captured. And so I think finding opportunities to collaborate with them will probably set us up for success in the future. I think I enjoy the innovation and the agility of younger colleagues, but there's school fees that they haven't paid that the rest of us who are mid-career hires have paid, because how we are simulated in the workplace is fundamentally different. And so I think to Nora's point, I think the other panelists highlighted the work ethic, and that's something that's learned over time. It's a skill that is harnessed over time through experience, through a lot of trial and error. So those of us who are here now, we've had the benefit of being in the workforce for 20 plus years, and even now, right? Like we still, juggle children who are teenagers, their changing needs, our changing needs as individuals in terms of where we are in our lives, in our biological makeup, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think I want to caution that we really try to, I think, not perpetuate some of these stereotypes. And I hear a lot of that in the language, not necessarily in this platform. I mean, I speak at a lot of these conferences where this type of language is amassed as a reality. It may exist in certain pockets. I don't want to discredit that. But by and large, if you look at successful organizations around the globe, and you'll see the age median of the folks that are running that are people who have amassed years and years of experience from multiple industries, from multiple disciplines. And so tapping into that multidisciplinary way of work. And I guess, sure, I mean, I think it will take a different shape and form. I've been in corporate for 20 years. I'm now a fractional worker, so my days never really look the same. So, I just came from shooting a podcast from a client. I'm now at this webinar. I'm off to do something else for the afternoon. So I think there's space for knowledge workers and gig workers. I think there's space for the traditional ways of work, considering that Africa really is the last frontier. So there's so much that we haven't quite, tapped into. And so I do think we need to kind of figure out what is the balance between all of these worlds, and how do we leverage, these multidisciplinary skills across multiple industries. I don't think we are as futuristic as where we need to be, or rather to the rest of our counterparts. There's a reason for that. I think there's nuances about Africa that are African. There's nuances about our employment construct and the labor skills and blue skill workers that we need to retain in order to keep our economies going forward. And so I think while technology is important in some spaces, I think we've got to be careful how we drive the integration of technology across, because then if we do, it's at what cost to our people on the continent, where we aren't as industrialized as the other markets. And I don't think we will be for quite a few years.
Yes, thank you so much, Elisa. And we are using this platform to break those stereotypes and not at all to propagate them. And this was a controversial question, and it was brought in to gather all the different perspectives.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for bringing that forth. We have this platform exactly for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can come in here. This is such an interesting topic in terms from an age perspective, because in the previous industries that I've worked with, the older generation, like the different panelists have said, have come with a lot of wisdom and a lot of change and also insights in terms of mentorship as well. So we did research from an age perspective, and what we learned is that South Africa, or Africa as a whole, has always been a younger generation, and the retirement age stems from, I think it was Germany, if I'm not mistaken. So we, as with everything else, we've adopted a certain retirement age from a different continent. So we adopted the retirement age of, say, 65 from a different country. However, with technology, moving as fast as it is, a lot of people are living longer, and a lot of that knowledge is required. And we are hiring that knowledge as consultants, because now we can't hire them post the 65 years of age. So it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting conversation that we're having. But if we understand where it stems from, we understand that it's really truly not ours, and our demographics are really vastly different. And the wisdom that we have with age and the older generation within the workforce actually, catapults the business to success.
Yeah, I can't say more than what Philip has said. I think you have it spot on, that there is a need for that balance, and the older generation is more required to be able to provide all those important aspects of the new generation. I mean, we have never seen it before, but now we have a state president that is it's about 37 years old. I think it was and those kinds of people actually surround themselves with people that are able to bring a different aspect to their success, and that's what we are. I look in my company. The average age is about 30, and my value proposition is to bring in what will make the young people succeed in the company.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And also, we can definitely have a debate on what is old. It's a construct we can challenge, right? So that's a debate for another day. So thank you for bringing it. but thank you. So I can say, 37 years young, so we can definitely challenge what is old. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing different perspectives in. So let's continue with our discussion. And Lisa, I would like to ask you that which tech innovations do you see which are playing the most significant role in enhancing employee well-being? Because we have talked about productivity, but I just want to bring the focus on employee well-being. Do you think technology can play a role there?
I think technology can play a role if coupled with the right strategy. I think sometimes we have these conversations in isolation with where we're going. These days there's a tech platform for everything, so I am conscious of my biases towards certain platforms, and so I won't call them out. But I think what is important is to understand what are we trying to curate from a holistic, wellness or otherwise workplace experience. What are the systemic issues we are trying to solve for? And ultimately, what does a happy, well-balanced employer in the context of my organization look like? And once you understand all of those levers and how they, holistically can exist, you then can go and find a platform, either a platform that already exists in the market, or otherwise, outsource the building of something that is inherently mirroring the values of your organization. And so I think for me, technology is a means to an end. So if you understand technology as a tool, sure, I think in some spaces, it's a necessary agitator, right? It gets us out of habitual thinking, and it gets us out, into a place where we can design process and how quickly we can deliver on things. And so for me, technology is a tool. It doesn't replace, I think, our human efforts in how do we craft a well-balanced DEIB strategy? How do we restore people's dignity in the workplace? How do we redefine what inclusion practices is? How do we make sure that people have a sense of belonging? They feel psychologically safe, that the ideas are protected. The ideas are cultivated. And so there's all of these human practice, I think, principles and levers that have to be pulled before the introduction of technology. I think a lot of employees are frustrated with us in the fraternity as HR people because of system change fatigue and survey fatigue. And the reason that's the case is perhaps we haven't been intentional and completely stepped up to the plate, that when we aggregate data and we ask people questions, we then circle back with a plan and say, we've heard your grievances, or we've heard your ideas. We're now ready to co-create some of these things based on the feedback that we've aggravated from you. And so I think it's a symbiotic relationship between employer and employee in terms of, how do we curate the space, and then ultimately we pull in technology as an accelerant of what that strategy needs to look like.
Thank you. That's interesting, and that's what you have been, speaking up for. I can see that. But now I just want to flip the coin and ask you, Andisa, do you see any areas where you think you should use technology to manage people better?
I think developing performance matrix and accountability structures that deduce bias. I think for a long time, our ability to objectively measure success has been predicated, upon who is the person on the other end with the red pen, as you will, and social capital sometimes with the employee. I think in larger structures, you would sit in a REMCO meeting or in a meeting around like people performance and bonuses, and you'd have people say, well, that number doesn't look right, I don't know who this person is. And so I think once we start removing the pageantry of the workplace, I think for a long time the people who have succeeded haven't necessarily always been the brightest, right? It's there's a social capital that's been required to the process and the ascension to leadership. And sure, we've seen that change in the last couple of years. Has it completely gone away? I mean, of course not. We all know this, right? There's people who get promoted on the basis of their social capital. And so I think the opportunity is, how do we look at equitable practices that keep in mind, I think, who the individual is, the value creation that they bring to the business, and then how do you marry that with reward? And I think those processes for a while have kind of been thumbsuck show. I mean, I think there's a lot of platforms that have been injected in some organizations, but by and large, there is still the human bias behind that, right? Someone has to input the data, and is that individual fair and just in their assessment, or are they not? And human bias is a big controversial, I think, topic, and I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being very honest with you, how do we completely do away with it? And I'd be open, I think, to suggestions. I think to those who have had, pleasant experiences where they've, found tech platforms that help circumvent around that.
Thank you so much, Andisa, for highlighting that. Bringing the factual perspectives in this discussion that, technology is definitely, there are areas where technology can be used, but the human bias might remain. So I would invite any of our panelists who would like to add to this discussion of the areas where you have found technology to be very useful, or maybe how we can reduce the human bias.
Look, I think I'll come in there. I don't know if we can ever get rid of that construct of that social bias, right? I mean, that's part of a culture of any organization. And the more toxic an environment is, the more that it gets abused, etc. So that's where we need to be holding ourselves accountable and really thinking to what everybody said here around purpose and that servant leadership concept. What are we trying to achieve as an organization? How do our leaders lead the way? But I think, I've been involved with another organization or an app called, I won't actually say the name now, but it's really, it's similar to what Kelabahila was saying around the rewards concept or the gamification of performance management. And I believe that performance management is a critical area that we're just failing at, like dismally. We run every 6 months or every annual appraisal or every 6 months, and we scurry to go and find the data. How did this person perform? And then we kind of push bonuses on it. Like, it's not in the flow of work. So I believe that technology can be applied, and almost track the social bias in a sense, where you have that, as I said before, the analytics at your disposal to be able to see why are people, literally at any point in time, an employee is engaged if they know where they stand. How do my managers, how do my peers, how am I perceived? Have I got a perception bias? What is my rating compared to what everybody else is thinking of me? And we have that transparency that starts to really make me think about where I am in this organization. What is my persona in this organization? How do I need to shift? And also with the guidance of mentorship, combining the whole ecosystem of mentorship, the in-person concepts we've been alluding to. You can't just tech there and expect things to change. You need to bring the wisdom from those who have got more maturity in terms of experience. Having conversations with our peers around how am I performing, where could I be doing better? Putting that lens on is really a critical phenomenon for productivity, engagement, accountability, culture, and really kind of forging a path forward for any individual aligned to the strategy of the organization, aligned to the strategy of that business unit. So those things, it all needs to play in terms of systems thinking. It needs to come together. So I think there's a strong cohesiveness between the performance management around technology and people, and showing up that lens.
Thank you so much, even for elaborating on that. Definitely, the cohesiveness and systems thinking is very, very important. And we can see how we can use technology for our benefit there. Nora, coming to you, I just wanted to hear more about how we can use technology for creating a more diverse and inclusive work environment from you. Nora, if you can elaborate more on that.
Thanks. Thanks very much. I think what a lot of my panelists have said, I think I admits to that, right? So I work for an organization that is 106 years. So we've got all sorts of generations within it. But I think for me, when you talk about diversity and inclusion, the one thing that we are always striving to do as the AC fraternity is, number one, to level the playing field. And I think Maggie spoke quite a lot about how technology can help do that, right? We now talk more around the language of technology and how do we make sure that actually everybody's up to speed with the language of technology. So diversity, as we used to speak about it, I think has evolved as well, because we're looking at diversity from with a different lens. But over and above leveling the playing field, I think it's about accessibility of some of these products, whether it's from a wellness, well-being perspective, but also, it's accessibility of the different, jobs that are available. But for me, I think it starts with understanding your workforce. Whether it's a younger generation, whether it's the older generation, I think we need to spend a bit more time. I always say we invest so much in terms of client segmentation when we think about our external clients and we think about the products that we want to make available to our clients. And I think we need to spend a bit more time internally as well to segment our employees and understand in terms of what their needs look like, so that from a technology perspective, when we start offering different programs or different initiatives, whether it's from a learning space, whether it's from a wellness space, from a reward space, how do we reward them differently? What we've started doing in the Santam space, for example, is that, there's AI-powered recruitment tools, because what we are trying to do, to Andisa's point, how do we make sure that we are minimizing that human bias, because it exists. And I always say that sometimes we try to ignore and say that it doesn't exist, but it does, because even myself as a human being, there are certain biases that I come up with, right? So it's really about how do we ensure that we are using technology, number one, to minimize the discrimination around diversity. And it's not diversity around black and white. Diversity, that subject on its own, I think it's a webinar, right, in order for us to understand what that looks like. But for me, what is critical is being very careful that line managers, again, or leaders do not use technology to discriminate, because we can do that. And therefore, it's important for us to regulate it, right? From a policy perspective, how do we make sure that we are regulating the usage of that AI? How do we make sure that there's ethical usage of that AI? And how do we make sure that there's also data privacy? Because with technology, the challenge with it is that, you've got so much access to data. That's really what it's giving you. But there's a shade of sight to it if you are not careful, that can be used to discriminate. So I think the call to us as the HC fraternity is, how do we ensure the correct ethical usage of this technology, so that it doesn't become another monster that rears its head and start driving inequity in the workspace. And I think for me, that is work in progress, right? Within our space, we've put together employee resource groups with different generational. So we've got a women's network, we've got a young professional networks, because we acknowledge that there is space for young professionals and for us to learn from them. We've got a network for people with disabilities, and the aim of those networks is to have these type of conversations, to say, what is it that is happening in this environment that we need to make sure that we are responding to from a technology perspective. We've just gone through culture roadshows, or we're in the middle of culture roadshows, and reality is that people are scared of technology, or people are scared of what this technology is going to mean for their roles, right? People feel that their roles are going to be obsolete. And I love what Maggie was saying around just building the trust. And it's about, how do we change manage it, and how do we say to people, technology will replace certain roles, but there is time for us to reskill. There's time for us to make sure. And there was a book that I read, and where they were saying the only people that should be worried, because it are people that are not adaptable, right? That are not going to be able, because right now for all of us, we should be at a point where more or less whether your role can be replaced by AI. And if it does, how do you evolve? And how do you ready yourself and say, if not this, what is it? Or if it is AI, how am I going to work with that AI in order to continue to be able to do the job? So I think there's so many elements of this diversity conversation around technology. But more than anything, I think for me, I loved what Mickey was saying. We need to build the trust. We need to have the dialogues. And we need to understand what are some of these, issues that people have and what keeps them awake at night, because so that we can help them make themselves ready for what the world is going to look like in 10 years' time.
Thank you so much, Nora, for bringing that very different perspective of diversity. When I asked you that question, I was expecting a very different answer, but what the points you highlighted, those were
When somebody from a business school say I was expecting a different answer.
No, it it's a very, very wonderful. You definitely touched upon different aspects of programs in terms of diversity which you're doing. But what you spoke about how technology, how we have to ensure that technology does not create that disparity. So that is very, very important point which you highlighted. It should not, it should remove that aspect of aloofness rather than creating it. That's a wonderful point which you made. And Lisa, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to echo Nora's point. A part of the reason I became a fractional worker was a matter of, yes, partly choice, but also partly, circumstance. The parts technology of my job has kind of swallowed up. It allowed me to think differently around what other competencies do I have and how do I harness those. And so I went from working a 5-day week to a 2-day week. But what has happened, in my other 3 days is it's allowed me to do pieces of work that I actually enjoy. So if you look at just how my world now looks like, so I've moved from being a traditional, CHRO or CPO to now being part that and part consultant. And I think the thing we've got to be intentional about is taking off the table that fear that technology is going to replace all of our jobs. What technology is allowing us to do is to reframe what our competencies are and how better can people play to their strengths. And so for those who are in the more corporate spaces, it begs the question, how can we start creating growth pathways for people to see what competencies are required by the organization? Again, not against the construct of job titles, because we eventually are going to do away with those either, right? You're going to go look at someone's profile and you're going to go, oh, cool, they've got 5 competencies that I'm interested in. And so when people look at my profile, it's not through the lens of I'm a CHRO, it's through the lens of my competencies. And so if it is African governments who are looking for me to come and moderate business conversations, that's all they're interested in, right? They don't have a vested interest in my ability to run performance metrics and stuff like that. And so I think we need to start also slowly rethinking and reframing what competency means in the workplace to hopefully help alleviate some of that fear that technology is going to completely replace people's jobs.
I think, Dr. Schuster's frozen there.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Shaista. I think, okay, if the panel allows me, can I put up the questions which we have got from the attendees? Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. There is a question by Dr. James. He's asked, what is the future of organized labor in a digital online service-based world? What is the future of organized labor in a digital online service-based world? Anybody, please. This is a question asked by Dr. James.
We're playing Stump the Panelist. I think I'll give it a shot. Again, I don't know if this is the right answer, but from my experience, I think aligned to what Andisa was saying now. I mean, we're all pushing towards a skill-based organization, right? So what I'm doing now with organizations is, gone are the days when, well, it's not gone are the days yet. Call it the next 5 to 10 years. You won't necessarily have, although maybe this is a bit extreme, but marketing, HR, product innovation, all those silos ways of operating. I think I'm pushing networked organizations or multidisciplinary organizations where you are solving tensions that are kind of showing up. So I think the way that we will be constructed is very different to how it is now. It's not like I'm an HR expert. It's about what are your competencies, what Andiso was saying now, around what is my value add that I can bring and when am I continually learning and growing in. So I think that's a partial answer to that's my initial thoughts to it.
That is great. Evan, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Any other panelists would be able to add something? Yes, please.
Maybe to add, I don't think that any business owner or HR specialist or HR generalist's role is to determine the role of an entity or an organized group of people. It is the role of that organized group of people to say if employees who are their membership, which determines their sole existence, is moving into gigs, what is it that they will be putting as a value proposition to those gig workers to still affiliate to them? So if nothing is being thought by those a group of people, I think this is the time for them to reimagine the world without a salaried employee and say, how do they then best propose to those gig workers to say, here am I am going to be your representative under the circumstances of no permanent employee. So I think that's where the evolution has to come. And again, as much as we evolve as HR practitioners, as much as we design a new value proposition for the future as liquid form of presentation of our skills and services to others, it's actually a call to everybody else to look at how then do they evolve themselves. I mean, I was looking at one of the papers that is being presented in this conference in the Silicon Valley in September, which is talking about a software again that is going to manage the labor relations matter. And obviously with all protocols of non-abuse, confidential information, half of that work is already going to be done by a software. What then happens to what people used to do in terms of representation of employees, and it's those people who are representing who has to imagine a new role, I think. Thanks.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you. I mean, there is really something which I never imagined that in labor relations also AI has to explain such a integral role. There is second question from Moise Kamba.
Dr. Renu, I see there was a hand raised by Nora. Nora,
yeah. No, I think Maggie covered it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I proceed, Dr. Shaista?
Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Renu.
Yeah, so there's one more question by Moise Kamba asking, do you think the administration industry will go obsolete? Do you think the administration industry would go obsolete?
Maybe let me take a step. I think you can ask that about any role, right? Not only administration. And it's all about evolution. It's all about understanding which part. It might not be all of it, but I really think any type of role will go obsolete if work is not being done to understand which part of that role will be more efficient. Because technology is more, it's more about efficiency. You don't do technology for the sake of doing technology. Otherwise, or you don't automate for the sake of automating. You're automating because you can get more off, or the quality can be better, or you can be more efficient. So I think the future of administration, if work is not being done to really understand, and it's probably evolution, it will look differently. I don't think that it will be the same, but there are some that will be left behind. So it's about the work that you're putting in now to understand how do you become more efficient in that administration with technology in the picture as well.
Nora, I think you're quite right. In fact, two of my ex-executive PAs are now virtual assistants. So they work across different time zones, because they're moms now. One is typically up earlier in the morning, so she's taken on clients either from the US, etc., etc. She's working around the construct of what her home is now. So she's gone from being a full-time executive PA to CEOs and other executives in the office, to now working at leisure, where she's managing diaries. There's a definitive MOU in terms of what's the time frame that she needs to go through someone's inbox, respond, set up appointments, etc., etc. So I think, to your point, work isn't going to go away, but it's taking a new shape and form. And I guess the question you've got to ask yourself is, what is your appetite? So you can still do what you've been historically trained to do. You're just doing it slightly differently. And you are using technology as a way to pivot. But fundamentally, both of them still very much do exactly what they did for me and other executives. It is diary management, right? It is making sure they're getting back to people. It's going through inboxes. It's project management, right? It's making sure the new principals now, who are either Mexicans or Brazilians or Americans or everything else in the mix, that that their scheduling and their clerical life, has been put in shape. Fundamentally, that's not different to what they did when they work at corporate SA. The work has just taken a different flavor. And so again, for me, I think it's important that we ingest into the language, I think, what is positive and what is futuristic, but what's attainable outside of the fear mongering, and I think allow for people's imaginations to go wild with them. And I think that's definitely more prevalent than not, right? There's a lot of fear mongering around what technology can do. What technology, for most people who have embraced it, is it's simplified life in some aspects. I've been exclusively working from home for almost 6 years now, right? And that's what technology did for me. So it allowed me in the last 6 years to be an active parent in my children's life. I get to watch their hockey games, etc., etc. My meeting construct is different. There's certain hours where I block book, and I would prefer not to take meetings. And there's certain times when I have to be present. And so it's given me different allowances to self-actualize in my life outside of self-actualizing at work. And I think that is a sweet spot, and that is an opportunity we need to harness.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you, Asbisa.
Sorry, I think so if we look at it from a retail perspective as well, so if you look at it from that perspective, you have an assembly line and you have those workers that are not necessarily administrative, but it's repetitive. So there are some tasks that, yes, would be replaced by machines. But I think in the retail sector, particularly in the logistics, what is happening there is you're creating a digital mirror. So you're still having those people do those tasks, but what you're seeing now is the same sort of processes on a digital platform, which is a digital mirror, that is following through and that is also doing that process, and that measures the error rate, and that can help you to predict, because you still need people interface to input into the entire value chain or the process. What it also allows for you to do is to enhance and create efficiencies by having a digital mirror. So I think when I look at it from, and thinking about the question, when I look at it from a retail lens, I don't necessarily think it would necessarily take away jobs in repetitive roles or administrative roles. I think what technology allows is a digital mirror for you to then enhance your processes and create efficiencies and also reduce error rates. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add one thing.
Yeah.
First, just to point also, I'm going to have to go and fetch my son in about 5 minutes because I've chosen to not be employed as well. But I think if I'm advising my 17-year-old son who's matriculating next year, I personally wouldn't advise him to go into like an administrative type of role. I don't deny anything that's been said today, but practically, when I'm looking at an activity-based analysis of an organization, I'm looking at those areas which are most repetitive and less cognitive. And those are things that can be kind of upgraded, or not upgraded, but the wrong word, but can be put into technology. It can replace it. So trying to bring into the cognition, even doctors today, I suppose, in all of our, that they're being replaced in an operation online. That's very soon to come. You can go and see where the temperature, how your temperature is going, and just by looking at PPG technology, whatever it is, how stressed the person is. So everything's gonna be, but I would steer him away towards the cognitive type of knowledge-based fields. I mean, that's my personal take.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ivan. And I see that we have, Dr. Regan, we have opened a Pandora box, and there are a lot of hand raises which I see. Yeah, I know that we are almost towards the end of the discussion, but definitely I would like to, if the panelists allow me a more 5 minutes or so. So let's take in the opinions and then we will wrap up. Please, Nora. Yeah, Nora, please.
Yeah, just to think, I think even raises such an important point as well, and something that we need to consider. And for me, it goes back to our education system. And I know Tandy mentioned that she sits on a board. We really, there's work that needs to be done in terms of our current education system. My opinion is that we are not readying this new student and these young people for the world of work where we are going. I think it's still very traditionalist in a lot of these. There might be some areas or some schooling that are evolving, but our schooling system hasn't evolved. If we look at the amount of unemployment rate that's sitting in this country, I don't think that there is active work to try and say, we still, even from a career guidance and a career, we're still doing the traditional stuff. We're still doing what used to happen 10, 20 years ago. But here we are talking about a subject of how the world of work is going to evolve and going to look like in 10 years' time. So I think for me, call to action to schools, but also to universities, is that we need to start thinking about that. And we need to start thinking about what are the roles and what those roles are going to look like, and what other curriculum do we need to bring in to make sure that these individuals and these young people, when they enter the world of work, that they are ready for the now world of work, but also for the future world of work as well.
Thank you so much, Nora. And you highlighted the purpose with which we came up with the idea of community of practice, so as to create this exchange, which will then guide our curriculum development. It can be one aspect of it. Definitely there are others. So thank you so much for highlighting that important point. I see Thandi and Maggie. Thandi, please go ahead.
Just to add very quickly to the theme of jobs and industries that are potentially going to be displaced. And I think of all of the answers, and they are all valid, I think also part of the danger that we sit in right now is in job titles and in the nature of how organizations are structured around hierarchies and these job titles that sort of come up with that. We don't currently have the vernacular or the language of what these new jobs and these new things will look like. And I suppose the call to action, as Nora says, and the challenge to organizations, leaders, execs, HR people, is in shifting from a job title to what can you do? What are you skilled at? And what are the things that you're able to do? What capacity have you got to learn more right now? And what kind of capacity can you develop? Because that's the challenge, I think, as humans. We sit and, we have all of this noise sitting at us, but we are also able to do so much more than our job titles. We have, in the world of talent management in that space, many people that sit in our organizations can do so much more than this job title that they've been boxed into. And when you unleash that potential and you start asking people for various things, you start seeing, oh my goodness, we have latent knowledge that sits in these places, and we didn't even know we needed this kind of insights and this kind of information. And so I think it's part of the dangers in the label that we give to jobs just in organizations versus what people are able to do for that work, as well as in other types of things, where then it changing and shifting that language and that vernacular starts to create a space where people can bring their whole selves and more into organizations.
Maggie, thank you so much, Tandy, for that perspective. Maggie, please,
About a year or two ago, we were told that HR is one field which is not going to join the bandwagon of AI. And here we are today. Half of it is joining the bandwagon. I've listed a number of softwares that are going to have the work that we used to do 2 years ago. And I want to appeal to the audience that if there's anyone sitting in this and who cannot imagine their new value proposition in the world of HR, they are going to be left behind. People need to imagine. And I also don't want to get a sense of I'm a victim of changes. There is no time for that. You need to be able to imagine your new role and begin to make your value proposition in order to evolve. And after you have imagined this, go to your HR expert in your organization and map the way forward as to how do you transition, where do you add value, and how do you assist your organization and your own profession to actually evolve and globalize. I mean, I sit in conferences globally without having to move. Like I said earlier, I hold my knowledge for the future. Even after I'm gone, my kids will get the royalties of all the work that I'm putting behind. The only thing that I know was my investment in HR over the last 43 years. And that's basically what I'm doing. And therefore, the minute you cannot imagine your value proposition, I'm pleading with you to say, go think deep without being defensive and without feeling like a victim, to begin to think about your own value proposition in every aspect of HR, in every aspect of whatever that you're busy with. I mean, have you ever imagined a hospital without a nurse? I am leading an organization which has all the nurses who are running hospitals from where I am seated right now. So our hospitals do not exist, they are virtual. Our hospitals we see patients virtually, we prescribe virtually, we do everything virtually because we decided that a hospital of every patient is the comfort of their own home. We don't need floors, we don't need walls, we don't need infrastructure. All that we need is technology to reach out to our patients, be able to diagnose them, be able to provide doctors, be able to provide psychosocial services. And there we go. That's basically where I am right now. So then the whole image of a hospital full of nurses going around, it's not existing in my own world right now. And it means all my nurses have actually realized how best they can actually create their own value proposition. My doctors, my psychologists, and that's where the world is moving. I can consult with a patient in Tumbu right now. I can consult with a patient in Rwanda right now because we don't have to move, because we're taking good advantage of technology. So I think let's imagine. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you so much. Dr. Shaista, can I proceed with the questions, please?
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up now because we are, towards the end of the time which we had. Definitely, I would like to, because I see that two of our panelists had to, I received a message that they had to leave because of other engagements. I just want to, I just wanted to ask a last parting question, from all the panelists, if we can just try to bring everything together. I just wanted to ask that what is that one tech-driven strategy or initiative that you will recommend for HR professionals to prioritize in the next coming 12 months? Any particular initiative that you want to highlight? Thank you, Dr. Renu.
I am very biased, and my response is sitting squarely in the world of people development, and that sits with employee development from when they start out in careers to all the way to execs. Just because you have arrived and you sit at in the highest levels of the organization doesn't doesn't necessarily mean that you need to stop learning. And the world as we know it now, with all of the changes and all of the new things we have to adapt to, is proving that you have to start learning something new. And so for me, it sits in the ecosystem of people development from when they are part of your organization, how you onboard your individual people, how you orientate them, how you provide the necessary skills and tools for them to do their work, and how to create learning paths and career pathways for them, and the ability for them to continuously develop their own capacity for learning new things. That part is probably the biggest part of technology that we need to develop as organizations, and that currently sits in fragmented parts and different platforms and systems. And the biggest part is to now create an ecosystem of something that is seamless for all of the things.
Thank you so much, Tanvi, for highlighting that very, very important aspect. Moving to Maggie, would you like to come in?
Hi, thanks, Doctor. I'm not particularly biased towards anything. All I think I need to say is that technology has taken over. We can't change it. We can't resist it. We just need to embrace it and be part of it and make it easy for those that we lead and those that we partner with to see value in evolving towards the best use of technology in order for them to capture the imagination of the world. Everybody's waiting for our services. Services have moved from the west to the east, and the east does not have solution for many of the problems that we are raising here, and we are the carriers of that solutions. And therefore, let's imagine and let's embrace the future and propose the best, and of course, be the best employers of ourselves.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maggie. Kelly, over to you.
Maggie just summarized everything so beautifully. Just for the next 12 months, I think let's understand what technology gives us. And when we say AI, I think as HR leaders, as HR practitioners, we need to understand the concepts. Even in business schools, because we have, decision making, we have predictive analysis, and we have descriptive. All three are a construct of AI. And we know that descriptive and predictive talks to ChatGPT, which we don't like, but we utilize it, and descriptive by itself talks to Excel, and you put in data and you spew it out. So let's know what we want so that we can achieve, the talent development architect and people can succeed in roles. Let's know what we want so that we can have our own value proposition, knowing based on the data. So I think for me in the next 12 months is we know we have systems. We know these systems are siloed in nature. How do we integrate them? But how do we deliver the output that we want from those various systems? And do we truly know what these systems deliver and how to benefit from them? So I think for me, next 12 months, myself included, is understanding the intricacies of the systems and how they can deliver the true output that we desire.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and that's a very important point, and you wonderfully summed it up, that we have systems, but we have to learn. And as we have been talking about learning and unlearning since the very beginning of our discussion. So it has been a very, very enriching discussion, and thank you so much to our panelists for that. And thank you to the audience for your questions. We started by talking about purpose, and then we touched upon where we can use the areas where we can use technology. There were some areas such as performance management, which were highlighted. But what was most, and definitely we talked upon the dangers associated and how we can overcome that through our leadership. We touched upon authentic leadership. We talked about servant leadership and how as leaders we need to communicate and we need to come in. We also talked about the multi-generational workforce and how we are using technology. And we also debunked certain myths related to age here in our discussion. So that was very wonderful. But what is coming out from this discussion is the importance of systems thinking, the importance of learning, unlearning, and continuing with that cycle. And understanding that, okay, AI is there, technology is there, but how do we transition, or how do we become agile as individuals? As Maggie was talking about, what is our new value proposition? It is very, very essential to understand, and definitely technology makes things accessible and it has a role to play in people development as well, as Thandi also spoke about. So thank you so much for your important points which you shared today. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our distinguished panelists and our attentive audience for your invaluable contribution to today's discussion. Also, a special thank you to Regenesys management and all the HRCOP members for your continued support and commitment in fostering a space for meaningful collaboration and growth, which is the COP. I would also like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to Ms. Lisa Schaefer, who is the Head of Learning and Teaching at Regenesys, Ms. Patience Neoni, Head of Regenesys Undergraduate School of Business, and Ms. Elizabeth Moore, CEO of Academic Affairs and Head of the Regenesys Postgraduate School of Business. They have been amazing leaders and they have driven this, and your commitment and leadership have been instrumental in making this event possible. So thank you so much. And lastly, but certainly not the least, I want to acknowledge Johan, Lebo, and the entire operations team for your hard work behind the scenes. Your efforts have ensured the smooth execution of this event, and we are truly grateful for that. So thank you once again to the panelists and the audience for making this discussion interesting. Thank you so much, and that's it from my end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Healthy, your exclusive gym incentive, where greatness begins. Cut